Uh, all right. Well, welcome to the IPRTF meeting for the 16th of June, 2025. It's also the Law and Justice Council. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. And I'm Peter Fraser. I'm co-chair with Heather Flaherty of the IPRTF. And since I just read the land acknowledgement, I'll share that for the last 25 years, I've been the land steward for Chuckanut Island, and that's been owned by the Nature Conservancy, and it is now been transferred to the Lummi tribe, which makes a big difference in my life, and it'll be very interesting to see where things go. They are wanting me to continue as land steward, and I look forward to the relationship. All right, do we have a quorum yet?
We do indeed.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. Well, now that I understand Robert's Rules of Orders as per Scott Cortice, I think we can just stay with our agenda as it is, and we will vote on 3 and 4 when we get to them. As long as we have, please don't drop off this call. All right, we have 2 motions, or rather 2 votes and motions for this meeting, 3 and 4. Our first item is going to be our prosecutorial diversion discussion. But before that, we have a new item that we'd like to do each month. And just to introduce it a little bit, I've written up a little something. So in these meetings, we hold the vision for behavioral health and criminal justice policy in Whatcom County and how it should look, how it should develop, where the issues are, what success looks like, and where to put our resources. And we share in these rooms, and when I say these rooms, I mean the IPRTF meetings and of its committees and our work groups and such, coordinate and solve problems together. We have a powerful and successful system for keeping the vision top of mind for ourselves and our agencies. And we have a responsibility to involve the public, let them know what's happening, and ask for their feedback. So that's what this is all about, sharing our work with the public. Particularly with the largest capital expenditure in Whatcom County history, in the jail and the behavioral care center and the levy itself, collecting stunning amounts of funds for behavioral health and public safety, people are particularly interested, as they should be. And so we are asking at each meeting for you all on the call to think of what news you have and that we can share on social media. We now are prepared to start putting news out on social media about IPRTF issues and what you all are doing in your agencies, in your groups and such. And so well, let's just take a moment for anybody to share what's going on that we might be able to put out there to the folks of Whatcom County.
Peter, do we want to talk about the size numbers that we heard last week at the finance meeting?
Sure. Yeah, I think that citizens would be very interested about that. I have not yet seen anything about that in the press.
So the number was 684 is the size, but it would probably start off smaller because that's the size we need in 2050.
And these are not final numbers yet. That report has not been finalized. However, that is where the consultant is right now at this moment.
Correct.
So, yeah, I think that that's a good one for the list. Arlene.
I think you have to tell the public that we are breaking our promise to them. We promised to build a crisis center and a jail, and it was a deal. We are not building the crisis center so far.
You're referring to the 23-hour crisis center?
Yes.
Okay. So far, we're not. As I think most of us on this call know, there are funding or operational issues that these centers throughout the state are having. And while I believe planning is still going forward, if somebody's from the executive's office is here and can speak to that, they might inform us of any of the latest news. But thank you, Arlene. That's good. I would add that we recently got a list of all the things that the district court have been doing to move the district court forward and make things better for the justice-involved population. They sent us a long list. I think that was newsworthy, and perhaps our communications folks can dive into that. Anybody else?
Peter?
Hi, Raylene.
Hi. So
What do you have?
This is not from our committee, but I thought it was actually newsworthy. I participated on June 6th at Tribal Judicial Summit, first of its kind in the state of Washington. So Chief Justice Deborah Stevens, and I'm probably saying this wrong, so my apologies in advance, but I think it's a SACWIN Chairman Chris Klotch Peters convened a discussion inviting tribal representatives and state court judicial leaders to share stories and learn about each other. After a welcome by Chief Justice and Chairman Peters, a brief introduction, participants enjoyed lunch, small conversations. The focus on those conversations was connecting with each other through personal stories and sharing issues about important to the tribes and state court leaders. After lunch, Colville Tribal Court of Appeals Chief Justice Anita Dupree's addressed the 31 attendees. She discussed some of the cultural touch points of the Colville tribe and the differences between tradition and culture, emphasizing why it is important to recognize global issues of tribal sovereignty and uniqueness of each tribe. After Chief Justice Dupree's presentation, Chairman Peters and Chief Justice Stevens invited attendees to report on their table discussions. Participants expressed their gratitude for such an event, discussed the experience of tribal representation with protection order enforcement and warrant issuance in Washington, and many expressed enthusiasm and general commitment to working on these issues collaboratively in the future. When they discussed about the warrants, so we give full faith and credit for protection orders for tribals, but there was a law change that goes into effect on July 26th, I believe, that will now allow us to do full faith and credit for warrants. So basically what was happening is if you committed a murder on the tribe and they issued a warrant and it was in their system, when the person left, it wasn't necessarily being picked up in state databases. So essentially getting away with murder. So this will allow, if there was a warrant issued by the tribe, that it could also be filed with the Superior Court, and then we would give them full faith and credit for that. So it can be entered into statewide databases. So I thought that was something that should at least be relayed to this group, because I think it shows that we're working together to try to help collaborate with the tribes on things that'll make it better for all of us. Anyways, thanks.
Very good. Thank you so much, Raylene. That's wonderful. Marty, go ahead.
Topic, which is that I think there may be a few people in the attendees room side of this call who possibly should be elevated to panelist, including one of our presenters. And I also see Stark on there.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
executive's office, a couple of people from executive's office. So just wanted to make sure
Jenna,
that
are you
they're
able
on.
to promote them?
Yep.
Looks like you are doing so.
Got
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Hey, Melora.
Hey, good morning, everybody. One thing, and I'll look to Eric Ritchie if he thinks this is a good idea, but there have been two really great roundtable events that have happened in the last about 4 or 5 months with prosecuting attorneys and people with lived experience in the justice system, where they've sat down and had some really meaningful face-to-face conversations, and that came out of the reentry simulation that all hands did last summer. And Eric, I'm going to put you on the spot, but I think it's something to really celebrate, that we're encouraging face-to-face conversations and really being curious and learning from each other. And what I have heard from some of the attorneys was that it was a pretty powerful experience. And I know that some of the people with lived experience who participated felt like it was the first time they had a chance to really give honest feedback about their experience and what they would like to see and what would have helped. So I think it's a really cool thing that has been happening. And I want to give Eric some credit for his office for being willing to do that. And I think it's worth noting.
That's great. Thank you, Melora. Does anybody else? Oh, yeah, Scott.
Seeing as how we're talking about public defenders, caseload limits are being raised. It's probably out there, but I don't know that everybody knows that. But I think for cities and for the county, we're all worried, like this is another huge strain on our general funds, and we don't know if we're going to get the money to do this. It's a good idea, just expensive.
Yes, it's a huge issue. We've been waiting for this decision for some time, knowing that it's going to affect us greatly here. Raylene.
I think Stark might have a little bit to add to that, because he's did a presentation involving that just recently. So I'm putting him on the spot as I see his name on the queue. But I do know that even without the caseload standards increasing, there is a shortage of attorneys. And it's not just defense, it's also family law. It affects truancies, at-risk youth, children in need of services. So we definitely have a shortage of attorneys, and the attorneys out there that are private do know that, and they're stretched thin as well, which is increasing the cost for everybody involved. I know there was a recent arrest over the weekend that involved multiple defendants, and we're going to end up having to find private counsel to take a couple of them, because it's going to be conflicted out from the conflict office, as well as prosecutors, or as well as public defender's office. We're going to be looking for attorneys. So it's a difficult time for not only the municipalities, but district and superior courts. So trying to find attorneys to represent cases also causes a backlog, because every time you switch an attorney on a case, basically you're starting over with that case. And so then there's more continuances, and that's something we don't really need, because we want to get these cases moved. So if there's detention time that needs to be served, it's because of a conviction and not waiting trial. Anyways, thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Raylene. All right, unless there's something else, we'll go on to our first agenda item. So Eric will be starting a conversation here. I've been very much looking forward to having in this group. Eric, if you don't mind, I'll do just a little bit of background on this, if that would be helpful. Okay. So as you all know, we started a behavioral care center work group, and the members of that are Eric Ritchie, Eric Sigmar from Prosecutor's Office, Judge Evan Jones from Superior Court. We have Hannah Fisk from Health Department, Caleb Erickson from corrections at the sheriff's department, Stark, Folis, and Maya Vanyo from public defender's office, and then myself as mostly a facilitator. These are the folks representing who the three most important organizations in making a behavioral care center run under the Nashville model. And that is the model that we are most focused on here. But this work group is really focused on understanding how the Nashville model works, prosecutorial diversion, the short-term stabilization, co-location and such with the jail, identifying what operational elements are needed and the legal and jurisdictional questions around that, and recommending a model that works for Whatcom County, our systems and policy environment, really. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric. We've had two meetings so far, one presentation from the folks in Nashville, and just wanted to hear from Eric what his thoughts are and how we, and then have a conversation. So take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Good morning, everyone. So we've had, as Peter mentioned, we've had a couple meetings, and a number of people also went to visit Nashville to see the progress of the program and see how it worked. And I'll just say that our community has come together, and we, as a whole, believe that this is a program that would benefit us greatly. We've talked about a number of different models of diversion. We've talked about what we have in our community, what we don't have, what would benefit us. And I'll just tell you that the idea of having a form of in-custody diversion is not only unique, but something that we believe would be incredibly beneficial to resolving cases and getting people the help and treatment that they need. The national programs, it's a national leader. It's probably the first program that's come around that's done a in custody type diversion program that gets people the short-term trauma-informed treatment, and instead of a cell, they get therapeutic care that it just supports their ability to reenter society without a record, and doing so safely, that it really protects the community. The recidivism rates have been incredibly they've been incredible in Nashville, and what I'm talking about is incredibly low. The national average recidivism rate is roughly 68%, and this in the very with low numbers. I mean, they don't have a lot of reporting years yet, but so far they're talking about 7%. I mean, the tracking is amazing. This is something that I think would benefit us greatly. It's something that this office supports. It's something that I expect we will use in a greater way than even Nashville has. As Nashville started out, they planned on reducing, or actually diverting, misdemeanors only, and I think we're going to be doing more than that. I think people would benefit from it, and I think that we will be comfortable using a diversion program that gets people that kind of service. I've expressed this in some small groups. Prosecutors are nervous about sending people out into the community after committing crimes without holding them as accountable as we traditionally do, which means a lot of jail time. And we're very nervous about people going out there and committing crime if we haven't done that. And without having a program like the one that's been developed in Nashville, I think we would continue to be nervous, but this gives us that opportunity to get people into the treatment program that would keep our community safer in the long run. So anyway, that's the nuts and bolts, or I should say the pros statement. And there are a lot of nuts and bolts, of course, that go along with that. And if people have questions or comments, I'd love to take them.
Eric, when it comes to victims of the crimes of these diversions, did you get any feedback on that from the study at Nashville? Or were they okay with the fact that they were being diverted and not being prosecuted?
So as I mentioned, the national program has been focusing on misdemeanors. They've been focusing on some of the lower level misdemeanors than, things that really don't have a lot of true victims, not a lot of not a lot of true victims, if you will. So no, I don't think they've really experienced that. In fact, one of the problems, one of the criticisms of Nashville has been that they haven't been filling up their beds consistently. But you know, as I said, we're gonna have to take on this program and be more aggressive with that, and we're gonna have to address that question that you're asking, Raylene. I think it's a real good one, but it's something that we're gonna have to address as we go forward.
When we were visiting Nashville, I believe that they had not yet introduced the felony diversions, but they have been doing felony diversions for since that time, and so um, they have some good figures on the success of that. And that's a good question, Raylene. Melora, you were there with me as well as Maya. I recall. I don't recall victims' families and victims being particularly opposed to this. That was just not something we heard.
Yeah, and I would just add, Raylene, to your question that the district attorney is the gatekeeper of who gets into the BCC or not. And so, you know, when we talked to them recently, they talked about, yeah, if someone resisted arrest, they'll talk to the officer before making a recommendation. And often, you know, the officer is in favor of the person having the option to go into treatment. So I think similarly, what our prosecuting attorney's office does, you know, when someone's going into a therapeutic court or another diversion program, that, and, you know, Eric, please let me know if this is accurate, but that we would, you know, we would expect that office to walk through and communicate with the victims or families before making that recommendation.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to jump in. Sorry, Birdie. I know you have another
Oh, that's
question. I'm going to jump in
fine.
and answer this a little more. So we do talk to victims of crime before we do plea bargains, before, you know, any sentencing. I mean, this is something that is a regular occurrence, and it's something that, you know, we have to take into consideration, but it's not always the answer. Just because a victim doesn't agree with us doesn't mean that we won't be going forward with a plea bargain or a particular sentence. And that will probably be true when we're talking about this diversion program as well. But you know, we certainly will be taking it into consideration, their views into consideration as we put someone in the program.
Birdie, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, there's been discussion in our task force about whether this behavioral health center will be, for lack of a better word, involuntary, in other words, a lockdown. And that's really what my question is. I understand that treatment doesn't work if people don't want to, but if they want to walk away, do they immediately go back into custody as opposed to a voluntary stay?
Right. So that's a great question, and this is a voluntary program. It's something that we talk to the people, and they have to agree to participate in. But if they don't want to participate any longer, then they'd be going back into the jail. So it's voluntary.
Yeah. Exactly. No, that's what I wanted to know because I know that had been a discussion. So thank you.
And if I could just
Melora.
add to that, Birdie, when we've talked to Nashville about it, they have about 25% of the people that go into the behavioral care center end up going back into custody. So in terms of being able to complete treatment, they have about a 75% success rate. Those 25% that go back, they said usually it's due to psychiatric acuity, and they just aren't in a place where they can be in a therapeutic setting. So they actually then go back into a unit where their more acute behavioral health needs would be treated instead of in a milieu.
Stark, I know you're on the line and you've been an active participant in the BCC work group. Can you give us your thoughts?
Well, I'm actually on vacation, but I wanted to hear Eric speak this morning. And I didn't really prepare anything. I didn't expect to speak, but you know, I think what Eric described is kind of the general direction that we're headed, and I'm sort of cautiously optimistic that we will move in that direction. And you know, these programs, you know, are not only the right thing to do for certain people, they have huge ramifications for the system. You know, heard all about our caseload standards and the problems that the county is going to be having moving forward. Diversion will do nothing but help the county cope with caseload restrictions. It also has a direct bearing on what the jail capacity will be. The 684 number possibly could be brought down if more diversions and more success were reached in a therapeutic setting. I did have one question though. I didn't go to Nashville, and if we're taking a significant number of people and putting them in a diversion program and giving them X amount of time to complete it, and if the 75% that Melora described do complete and walk out of the jail without charges, uh, what happens with restitution?
Clark, would you um, uh, define restitution in this case?
Well, my house gets broken into, and the person has drug problems, and Eric decides to put them in the behavioral care center. They spend 60 days getting drug treatment, and then they walk out of the jail. Who pays for my broken door and my stolen TV set?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Stark, and you know, I don't think we've had that answered yet. We've had a meeting relatively recently with the folks from Nashville. We had a number of questions that were prepared, but our conversation got cut short due to technology issues. And that's a great question, Stark. We have more opportunities to speak to them to find out what they've been doing, but that's something that we should talk about as well. I'm sure we can come up with an answer.
Well, and I would say that, I mean, Eric, you would agree, I think, that restitution is often an impediment to recovery court. If there is a large amount of restitution owing in a particular case, uh, at least in the past, I'm not sure exactly what's going on right now, the state would not agree to put people in recovery court because they have no hope of being able to pay that restitution off. And you know, if we're going to get buy-in from the citizens of Whatcom County, it seems to me we have to put some thought into that. But
Yeah, really good, Stark. That's something that we should work on. I have some ideas as you're talking, but we should probably discuss it later.
And as Eric mentioned, our colleagues in Nashville have been very generous with their time, and they are ready and willing to talk with us further and help us along. I think they're quite proud of the success of their model. And they want to see us do well with it. So, what other questions and thoughts do people have? I know, Melora, you have not only visited it, but you were on the line with Nashville and taking notes and such. And as a leader there at the health department, I'm just curious anything that you have to say on the model and how we move things forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we look at our continuum of care and the different areas of intervention that we have, opportunities to divert out of the legal system into supportive supports, um, you know, we have different groups of individuals who are at a point where either their addiction or poverty or homelessness are impacting their behaviors in such a way that they end up having new charges, they end up being incarcerated, right? We know exactly that what we have to offer is not necessarily what they need. And so the Behavioral Care Center really does give an opportunity for people to engage in a therapeutic treatment option. And they understand that if they're not able to complete that or they're not willing to participate, that they will go back into custody and that prosecution will kind of follow in a traditional manner. What we heard from the BCC treatment providers is that, you know, once people shift over into the BCC out of the regular jail, they really start to say, oh, this is an opportunity. Not only are their charges potentially going to be diverted, but they have these wraparound services and they're in an environment where they can start to kind of unpack some of the root causes of what's driving the behaviors that are bringing on the charges or the incarceration. And the reality is that even though we are trying so hard to build new facilities, make sure that we have therapeutic interventions available, when people are cycling through crisis, sometimes they're not able to access that at that time. If a less restrictive option is available for that person, we'll always recommend that. But if it gets to a place where they have charges and they are incarcerated, there's an opportunity here for them. It's also a chance for the community to say, we really want to help you get back on your feet, right? It's a message that, yes, there are consequences for the behaviors that happened, and here's an opportunity. And not everyone will want it. I think we will have to make sure that the treatment and the therapeutic environment is effective and evidence-based. So there's lots of heavy lifts in imagining this here in Whatcom County, but it adds a new option for people, and it adds an option for courts and prosecutors to say, hey, we see a pattern here and we really want to divert, and we believe that getting the right supports could make a difference for the community and for the individual.
And just to remind everybody, this was a really key element, I believe, in why we had such a overwhelming vote for the levy this time. This model was part and parcel with that, and along with the behavioral health spend that came along with the levy dollars. So it's something that you know, that we're invested in as a county. I also would hasten to add, just for those who have not been following this whole discussion, that this is a facility co-located with the jail, and it is its look and feel is more akin to perhaps a medical office or it's a very pleasant environment. The folks that are on staff are dressed more in hospital scrubs. They are not dressed as it does not have the jail environment feel, and it is all trauma-informed design, as our jail will be, but it is a very therapeutic feeling environment. So, Rosa, you've got a question or a statement?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to circle back to, I was thinking about this the whole time. That when it was stated that the public defenders caseloads are going to go up, so I guess my thought was, so since they're going to be dealing with so much, I'm wondering how many people are just going to get locked up. You know what I mean? Like more people, how that number is gonna be raised versus say a diversion court or say a drug court. So say it's not really criminal, but like they got caught using, meth on the side of the road, right? Or whatever. So I'm just wondering, because of the overwhelming factors that the public defenders go through, like, is there gonna be more people in jail versus or these different entities like the diversion court or maybe drug court are going to be like, oh, this is for you guys and this is for you guys, and just divvy them out. I was just wondering about that.
Dark, would you like to respond to Rosa's question?
Yeah, I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but I will say that one of the things that we're wrestling with is there will have to be a defender involved in a diversion program. We will have to have somebody out there advising people of what their rights are, and what rights they may be giving up if they go through this diversion program. For instance, when people go into recovery court, they give up their right to a jury trial. They give up a lot of their constitutional trial rights by going into that treatment type disposition. And I don't know if this diversion will end up in that same manner. But the reality is that defenders have to be involved in the diversion process because a charge has been filed, and when a charge has been filed, it triggers the right to counsel. And so the county will have to have counsel provided for these people. The question that we're struggling with is whether we will have to count those cases the same way we count the cases that we do otherwise. You know, I have one lawyer that does recovery court, and we just view that as like, I can't remember what it is right now. I think it's like a third of a caseload. So we reduce that person's caseload by 1/3 to reflect the time that he spends on recovery court and both in court and in meeting with clients. And we may be able to do the same sort of thing with a diversion program, is just have a diversion lawyer, one lawyer that does that and gets a reduced caseload in consideration for doing that. I think that that's at least worth exploring, and you know that may involve going through the Bar Association ethics hotline to see if that complies with the standards and so on and so forth. But that's kind of the way I view it in terms of how it would impact caseload. And then, you know, if we have significant numbers of people in the diversion program, you know, those that make it through will never see the line attorneys. So theoretically, their caseloads will be proportionately lower. I can I just add one thing to Peter, what you said about the behavioral care center and the jail being co-located. My recollection is that 684 number also reflects the number of beds in the behavioral care center. Those are not just general population jail beds. So that makes that number a little bit easier to sell and a little bit easier to deal with psychologically. You know, if you're talking about a jail that's maybe five something with 100 behavioral care beds or whatever the number was, I can't remember what the numbers were, but that reflects the beds in both facilities.
That's correct. Yeah. And I would also just like to remind folks that a part and parcel with this whole model is a very powerful part of it is that each weekday morning, a member of the public defender's office, prosecutor's office, and probably in our case, the health department, review who is coming in to the jail system, and then focusing on who is going to be the best fit for the behavioral care center. And so this requires those three organizations to work together each day to divert folks appropriately. So, and it's been wonderful to be in these meetings with representatives from those three groups and others, and see them working together, developing this this model for us here in Whatcom County. Raylene?
Thank you. My question is, I don't know how it worked in Nashville, but when you have defendants that have cases in the municipalities and district court, and then you finally get, you know, one that you're like out of the county that we're like, hey, we want to divert this person. Is that something you could work with the prosecutors and the defense attorneys with the small cities so that you could combine the cases that they have for continuity to work with one attorney from the public defender's office or the prosecutor's office so that you can try to collaborate with all the small cities to take some of the load off of them as well?
So that's a great question again, Raylene. It's something we hadn't really contemplated. Typically, I think the plan has been to divert cases where they come in as individual cases, but you know, this is something that could be done. We do work with other agencies, other municipalities, putting cases together as a global, and you know, it could be done, but you know, it does provide or cause you know, other problems too. Again, as Stark talked about restitution, a lot of times in the lower courts there are restitution issues, and those are things that would need to be taken into account. More people, we'd have to get more buy-in from people to make that all happen. So it's complicated, but it's possible. Probably wouldn't happen as a routine, but could happen.
I mean, I'm thinking about most of the small cities, with the exception of Ferndale, all use Whatcom County probation and pretrial services. And they are the ones that monitor restitution for the small cities. So just, I think buy-in from it's not just the small cities, but it's also probation, if that's something that they think would be beneficial because they're already monitoring the restitution, to throw that out as a thought, because I think it would also help with the fact that we don't have enough attorneys to go around.
Right. No, I appreciate what you're saying. And it, like I said, it probably wouldn't be a routine. You know, so we just heard from Peter, the prosecutor and the public defender and probably someone from the health department would be getting together very quickly after a person's been arrested to make the determination. And, you know, as you know, when you try to get other people involved and you try to get a global thing and put together, that takes days. It's not something that happens immediately. So getting somebody admitted into the BCC would be more difficult if we're to do that, you know, on a routine.
Jenna.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick note that we can't take a vote if we do lose quorum. So I just want to put that out there to make sure we're mindful that we do need to have a full quorum in order to vote.
Oh, okay. All right. But and we have a full quorum currently?
We do, yes. But I
Okay.
think we're losing someone at 10.
Okay. All right. Are there any pressing questions before we go on to the next two items? Well, thank you for the presentation, Prosecutor Ritchie, and for the good discussion. We will continue meeting as a work group. I guess in one sense or another, we just met today for the last half hour, and we'll continue the discussion and move things forward and then report back to you, to all. Great. Okay, could we see the agenda, or Jenna, would you show me the agenda up on screen? Fantastic. Okay, so I ask that we not lose anybody. We cannot lose our quorum. We need to vote on these things. So if anybody has any ideas for how to get through these quickly, Marty and Holly, and get a vote, I think it would be important. So
Great. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Marty and I are here today to present to you the final annual report and then the action plan. The IPRTF action plan is 2 items. So what we're hoping for today is some less, because we've, you know, been through this a couple of times now for feedback. So what I'd like to do is just pop up on the screen, Jenna, if you could, or just scroll down to the final annual report. Let's just look at the cover page for a moment. And yeah, this was a lot of great work of a lot of people, including Jennifer Moon, who works with Marty and I, and who's just amazing. So what we're looking for right now, which is if there are any corrections to this document, we'd like to hear them now and see if we can get those resolved and then call for a vote. So yes, Scott, I see your hand.
Yeah, I guess to keep it moving forward, I'll move that we approve the annual report.
do we have a second?
I'll second.
It sounds like Dan Hamill seconds. Any discussion or corrections? All right, all those in favor indicate by raising your hand. All right, any opposed? Laura, I see your hand up. All right, that looks like it passes unanimously. And thank you very much, everybody. Holly,
Yep.
you may continue on.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're moving on to the action plan. So the action plan is included by reference in this report, but it really is it's a document that really guides the work of this committee. I should also, so those blue highlights would disappear and it would be a hot link. With the action plan, which we worked on this last year, all of the committee plans are in there. They don't need to be perfect today because we really see this as a work in progress. But if you do see anything that seems really critical to correct, we can do that today. So if you keep scrolling on down a little bit farther. Yeah, I think
It's page 32 of the packet.
great. So that is the action plan. We would also love to get approved today. We are going to clean up it uses at least 17 different colors of blue. Just
Sorry.
sorry about that. And it has to stop, go back up one. And it has no cover page yet, but we will fix that before it goes live to County Council. Again, as reference, but it's really the project, it's really a document for all of you. So, any concerns about the action plan?
I'll just say that you've done marvelous work, and I have gone through these 3 times. Really appreciate all the work that went into it, and the action plan in particular is a very important and living document that we use to move forward all of our work here in the IPRTF. And I would love for all of you to be very familiar with this document. Scott?
Once again, I'll move that we approve the action plan as presented.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Dan Hamill seconds. Any discussion, corrections, thoughts before we take a vote? All those in favor, raise your hand, please. All right, I think we're good there. So please take down your hands. Anybody who is opposed, please put your hand up. All right, seeing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate that. And Kim, I know you need to go at some point here. So those who need to go, feel free. Thank you very much for making the quorum that was so necessary to this meeting. Really appreciate your attendance. And while we're on these 2 items, Holly, I know we rushed through that. You may have in your notes things that you'd really like to point out, or we do have a little time for discussion if anybody needs that time. So I just want to reserve that.
There's nothing from us. I feel like people gave great feedback, and yeah, so I just assume we carve out any extra time we have for the performance evaluation plan.
Very good. Okay, thank you so much. Could I see the agenda again, Jenna? All right, very good. Well, I've been looking forward to this. Julia, are you on the line?
I am.
There you are. It's all yours. Thank you so much for being here and being ready to present.
Yeah, definitely. And can you remind me how much time I have?
Well, how much do you need for this section? I would say that we should have plenty of time. Are you thinking 20 minutes? 30?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you all for having me today. I am going to go ahead and share my screen, and wanting to just give you an update really on where things stand with the performance an evaluation measurement plan. And I know, however long it was ago that we talked, and I shared where things were at last time, which was just that we had, kind of identified measures. But then we're going to really be digging into the data aspect of it. And so that's what I've been doing in conjunction with a handful of other people since we last spoke. And so let me zoom in for you all. I'm really kind of wanting to focus on the outcome evaluation piece today. And what I'm sharing, the process evaluation is focused on, and I can scroll up here, is focused much more on looking at the projects and, looking at those questions of how much did we do and how well did we do them, which folks are already, for the most part, reporting on through the various reporting mechanisms that are happening for quarterly and annual reports. So not to say that those aren't important, they are, but I think what I want to focus on is the outcome evaluation piece of this as, in my opinion, this is really the meat of this performance measurement plan and the area where I think there's the most kind of opportunity for action. So to kind of remind you where things left off with the outcome evaluation, we are looking at both what we are referring to as definitions of success at the systems, services, and facility levels. These definitions of success, are based in what was found in the needs assessment for kind of overall goals, and then as well as were discussed with JPOP and got lots of feedback on ways that they felt these definitions needed to change and adapt to how things had been going. So what I have done and is broken down each level of definitions of success into evaluation questions, the corresponding indicator and or indicators to measure, if that evaluation, like how would we answer that evaluation question? And then indicated why it matters and what it tells you. And then from there, there is a supplementary kind of Excel workbook that goes with it that lays out, okay, here's the indicator. This is how you would measure it in terms of numerator, denominator, what data is needed, where does that data come from, and then a status, which these status and kind of this element needs to all still be reviewed as, this was just submitted on Friday. And so wanting folks to kind of validate and verify this. But the different statuses that I have in here right now are if the data exists and is accessible to WCHCS in terms of being able, is it in their data warehouse as it stands, and or is it something that, WCHCS has access to? And on top of that, can this indicator be calculated on an aggregate level? And what I mean by that is there are some of these indicators that require it to be tracked on the participant by participant level, meaning that, if we want to know if someone was diverted or like how they flowed through the system, you need some form of unique ID that links them from system to system. And that's a much bigger task than being able to calculate something on an aggregate level. And so the easiest and thus the green status are the things that are data that exists, is accessible to WCHCS as is, and can be calculated on an aggregate level. And then from there, the other statuses are broken down into elements such as, a data sharing agreement or DSA needs to be established. So that's, a different level of effort that is needed to move forward with calculating or being able to calculate something. As I was mentioning, building out kind of integration or unique identifiers between systems. That's another level. And then versus a whole new data tool kind of being established. And so one example of this is, a standardized risk assessment tool being used across the system right now. From the conversations I've had, this is not in place. Or there are some examples which I am looking, like, for example, an agency capacity survey, anything that would require a survey, which there are a handful of things throughout that do, would be a new tool that would need to be created and thus used in order to collect that data. So anything where we'd want to hear feedback from different partners and organizations, or feedback from inmates, feedback from jail visitors, et cetera, those would all be new tools that would need to be created. So that is kind of how this is all getting mapped and laid out to identify, okay, in these kind of high level buckets that I just explained, what percentage of the indicators to measure success and outcomes are something that, could be reported upon now or shortly in the future, versus what is going to require significant effort in terms of creating data sharing agreements, in terms of creating, cross-system linkages, or in terms of needing to develop a new tool entirely. And so then we also, so that, like I said, that's at the system level, the service level, and the facility level. And then we also have the key goals as outcomes, which are the 4 highest kind of measures or indicators that we would use to look at an outcome evaluation. So that's looking at reducing the number of people in jail, shortening the length of time spent in jail, increasing connections to care, and lowering rates of recidivism. As it stands, the 2 that are able to be calculated right now are the first 2, reducing the number of people in jail and shortening the length of time spent in jail. Those, only require Spillman jail management system, or JMS, to calculate. And so those could be calculated and reported on, hopefully in the near future, versus these second 2 need to have kind of conversations across the different partners and different agencies and organizations along the continuum of care to agree upon how we're defining these. We've, started some of those conversations, but it's something that, is beyond my scope to be the one to decide how is Whatcom County defining connections to care. And then also, how is Whatcom County defining recidivism? There's the definition of this is how we can calculate it right now, which is just whether or not someone has experienced a booking incident after being released from jail. And you can choose a timeline that you're looking at that within. But there's so many nuances to the definition of recidivism that, as a group, I think folks need to come together and truly decide, okay, this is how we want to define it. And that's how we'll get there in terms of being able to actually track that with data. So those 2 are not able to be calculated as of now. What I like to say is you can't measure what you can't define, and you can't track what you can't measure. And so that's needed before you can even move to figuring out, okay, now where are all the data pieces? And then the last bit that I'll chat about and then kind of open up for questions is this, or actually, sorry, the second to last bit, the impact evaluation. I mentioned last time, and I've had some conversations with a few of you about this, that there's a caveat with impact evaluations. I think a lot of times people want to be able to show causality. That is not something that we're talking about in this case when we're talking about an impact evaluation, because there's many factors that influence health and safety in Whatcom County, not just the Justice Project. And so if we see an improvement in health and we see an improvement in safety, you know, we could generally say like, oh, we think that, you know, all of the efforts we did through the Justice Project contributed to this, but we cannot say it's a one-to-one, like because we did this, this improved. And so I think, you know, wanting to make sure, and I've put some of that language in here that folks understand that. And so we can track these things and you can share them with the public, but, you know, we are not able to say that if health improved, it's solely because of the Justice Project, or if safety improved, it's solely because of the Justice Project. And so majority of these indicators that we have for health, and let me come here. Majority of these indicators can be tracked and actually already are being tracked on WICHE, which is the Whatcom County Health Insights, which is great because I think, you know, that's something that's already being calculated, already being visualized and shared out. There's a few that, you know, I'm going to be in conversation with Lynette and Chris from WCHCS about if they have any knowledge of indicators that or data sources out there for these. I think there's, yeah, 4 that currently, you know, are not being calculated and shown online, but definitely great already that so many of these are already kind of visualized and available for the public to see. And then the final piece that I wanted to share with you all is this general, and I'll zoom out, which it's going to get quite small, but let me zoom in. Looking at data systems across the different intercepts, which if any of you were on the index call most recently, you know, we talked about this and went through it together. So this, you know, should look familiar to you. And so trying to understand, okay, across the different sequential intercept model intercepts, so from community services to law enforcement, initial detention and court hearings, to jails and courts, reentry, and then post-incarceration community supports, what data systems exist, and then similar to kind of what I was talking about before, which ones are quote unquote accessible in terms of can currently be pulled into WCHCS's data warehouse. And so that's what the green is showing versus the reddish orangish color is highlighting areas in which, you know, it's not accessible by that definition that I just gave. And so, you know, primarily you'll see that the data that is not accessible is going to be any kind of health records, so EMRs or EHRs, so Epic or Health Secure, anything that right now, you know, in terms of CAD or Whatcom 911, Fire EMS, that's all available. Gelada is accessible by the definition I gave. Bellingham Police Long Arm, Spillman in terms of both the RMS and JMS. And then once we get into the courts and public defender and prosecutor, that is also an area where, based on the definition of is it accessible to WCHCS to pull into a data warehouse and kind of combine and link and integrate? No, as well as tribal data systems. So there's definitely a lot of area for action and collaboration to improve the ability to measure all of the things that we want to measure. But there are some that, you know, can be reported out now, but there are definitely many that still have a lot of work that needs to be done to get to that point where we could calculate it and share it out with the public or even just internally to you all. So I'll go ahead and stop there. I know that was a lot of information delivered quite quickly, so I'm happy to go back to anything that folks have question about or want to dig into a bit more.
Julia, thank you so much. Really appreciate the presentation. And Jenna, would you promote Dean White from Health to be a panelist just in case he wants to weigh in, as he has been very close to this project and this contract. Okay, who would like to ask questions, make statements? Anyone?
Not sure if silence is a good or a bad thing.
Oh, Bertie, please go ahead. You've got to turn on
Okay.
your sound.
I'll take a stab and be brave here. I think this is excellent work, and I really appreciate all that you've done, Julia, of taking this huge system and distilling it into something that's understandable with good recommendations. So my question is maybe less for Julia and more for our task force. Once Julia is done and issues her report, what is our next step? Because there are obviously some areas where she actually has green and certain things are reportable but are not currently being reported publicly. So there's that somewhat small area, and then there's the larger area of needs lots of different work in terms of data service agreements and in terms of actual technological changes for data sharing. So where does our task force come in next? And how do we take this and make it meaningful in recommendations to the exec committee?
I would be very interested in hearing from the executive's office and from health department in particular, because you've been directing this process towards a data dashboard and a robust data system that we've all know we've needed for some time, so that we could analyze what we're doing, what's working, what isn't working, and such. And so Julia's wrapping up her part of this endeavor, and I'm just wondering, Bertie has a good question from asking the IPRTF. I particularly think the executive's office and health have power in this situation, and would love to hear from them first.
I would defer probably to Melora. I think Kayla's out today, so can you address that one?
Yeah, I can make some comments, and I think that Dean, please, I would love your perspective as well. What I think Julia is highlighting and what this project and contract really highlights is the infrastructure that has to be built, the modernization of our ability to take in data and analyze it and then be able to share that out. Julia is giving us a framework for what that could look like. And so, I would say that with the right resources, Health and Community Services absolutely would love to see analysis and good data collected and be able to there's so many areas that we already collect data, and we're looking at population health and also looking at program outcomes for the programs that we collect data on as well. So I think we're already in a modernization effort. And Lynette Bennett, as the manager of one of our divisions, has been leading that charge. But I can just speak as the data system that we've been trying to build within the response systems division. We're 5 years in and still plugging away, trying to make that work. And so if you can take any local information from me, it's that these things move slowly, and we have to have all the partners on the same page. We have to have the investment and the staff to do the work, and we have to be able to the systems have to be able to talk to each other. It's so possible. It is a matter of if we have buy-in and political will and the financial support to do so. So that's a very operational view of what Julia has just described. And Dean, if you want to add to that, please.
Well, I think that's a very good summary of the challenges to move beyond what we'll be getting in the report. I would just mention that the Behavioral Health and Legal Justice Committee jointly set up a data work group that Bertie and I and others are a part of. And we presented a charter, proposed charter to those two committees last week, which basically proposes that that work group take the report from Village Reach and begin to, I guess, champion what it will take to move beyond the recommendations and bring that before those committees and ultimately the IPRTF. It will take resources and it will take agreements among organizations, each maintaining specific databases to share those data. And some of you may know the health department has been working on trying to create data sharing agreements for a number of years, and it's not an easy task. There are a number of efforts underway that still have impediments to them.
Okay, thank you for that, you two. I really appreciate it. What other thoughts, questions do people have? Any elected policymakers here on the call who might have thoughts on the matter? Anyone? Okay, I am not seeing any questions or statements there. We have a long way to go on this, that's for sure. Julia's work has been very helpful. I can see I have not had access to the report yet and look forward to reading it thoroughly and getting my head wrapped around it. These are critical issues, as I've said so many times before. Without good data and a way to understand it, we simply cannot navigate appropriately this large ship of ours and make the improvements that we need. And you know, we have so many different programs going on, and we don't yet know which ones are working and which ones aren't, and to what degree that they are. And yeah, we've got a ways to go, and I really appreciate all of Julia's work on this and the other folks on this call. Bertie, I know you've been very close to this, Dean and others. It's critical work and frustratingly slow, but it's no individual's fault, and we're just going to plow on through here. Bertie, go ahead.
Sorry, I have one more question because I think this is an important subset. And so, Julia, you have talked previously about not just the overall report, but the ability to disaggregate the data into by race/ethnicity and by the presence or absence of serious mental illness. And I guess what I'm wondering is, I'm actually making a statement or a request. I hope that your final report will mention it and at least address what you've learned about the lack of consensus around how you even do those things and any recommendations that you might have. Because I think the public is looking for that type of disaggregation. And so I would hope that that is in front of our IPRTF task force to continue championing. Thank you. I know you have 2 weeks left, so.
No, just to flag that is a part of it, and is, you know, kind of at a higher level than at each individual data source. One, because right now there is no standardized definition of serious mental illness and or mental illness across, you know, the continuum of care. There's no standardized tool that's being used to assess that. So some of it, you know, is kind of judgment calls based on folks who are interacting with individuals being booked and arrested. And so there's not a standardized way to do that, which, you know, limits our ability to disaggregate on that front and is something else that would need to be done. Race and ethnicity, you know, is a bit more feasible to do. However, there are a lot of conversations that can be had around defining that as well. You can use, you know, how the census defines it, but I know that's not always, not everyone agrees with that. And then there are some process improvements, I think, that would need to be done across the system when it comes to race and ethnicity data. So yes, that will be in there. Don't worry. I will elaborate on that, but yeah, just didn't share today because it's not at the individual indicator level, because I think, that's too premature. There's still some greater conversations, just, looking at it kind of systematically on those elements to be able to even then dig into what that would look like at a data system or data set level. So thank you, Brady.
All right. Very good. Anybody else? All right. Thank you so much, Julia. Really appreciate your being here today and all your work on this. Let's move on to the next item. Jenna, would you throw the agenda back up on screen, please? Okay, committee updates. And then after that, I believe we have public comment and go to the order. So let's begin with Legal and Justice System Committee. Raylene, are you going to give us a report on that one?
Yeah, so May 13th, we had a presentation from Christopher Quinn about the True Blood. More on a definition of what that was for individuals that weren't familiar with the True Blood decision, and how that affects the legal and justice process. We also discussed the funding that comes out of the True Blood case, and that some of it is held up in appeals, and there was a grant that offered some funds that we were hoping to be able to be used towards housing for some of the diversion programs. That grant was not funded and not accepted on the last run, but according to Kayla, as soon as the application process comes through, we will be applying for that in the near future. So hopefully that is something that we can continue to work towards in order to move forward with some of the diversion plans that we had going. And then we also had Commissioner Casey Emmerich and Judge Jones speak on the background of what the court uses to determine whether or not to release or if bail is appropriate, including the defendant's rights to bail according to Article 1 of the Washington State Constitution and Court Rule 3.2 on determining release conditions. So that pretty much kind of sums up the two discussions that were on May 13. There's a little more information in your packet if you'd like to read through that. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dan Hamill if he wants to discuss the joint meeting that we just finished last week.
Yeah, I'd actually like to maybe boot that to the next task force meeting and then or the next steering committee meeting.
Perfect.
Okay. Jenna, would you make a note of that?
Sure thing.
Okay. I'm sorry, I need that agenda back up on screen so I can see the next one, or if somebody has it in front of them. J-Pop, who is covering J-Pop today? Do we have either of the co-chairs here?
I think we have Tasha in the waiting room.
Oh, as an attendee. Oh, yes, there she is. If
Tasha,
you
want
could.
to pop in as an attendee and say a few words? Jenna, can you promote her? I see her hands up anyway. There she is.
Great. Hi, Tasha.
I've been just listening, so it's been a very great meeting. We're having our planning meeting this afternoon at 5 o'clock for our meeting for next week. I really appreciated listening to Julia's breakdown today. I'm sure we'll be discussing that further in J-Pop as well. So moving forward with that.
I'll add in one thing. When we met on May 15th, we presented a kind of preliminary report on focus groups we did with people with inmates in the jail, and actually they were at the work center. And at this upcoming meeting, we're going to present the results of the survey that we did that was kind of informed by those focus groups. We've just completed the survey. We have 99, and they were about half and half inmates in the jail and in the work center. And we're compiling that data now. So that will be at our June 26th meeting. And we'll put all of both of those pieces together into one package. And that will go to the folks working on jail design, and we can share that with you all as well. The main focus of the focus groups and survey has been about services and design features for the new jail and behavioral care center. So that's what we're working on. We'll get that to you soon.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for doing that work. Okay, Dan, are you speaking about the Behavioral Health Committee's update?
Yeah, so the May 20th meeting, I was not, that was actually chaired by Brian Estes and Stephen Gockley. So that was Stephen's last meeting as co-chair, and Brian's first as his co-chair role. I was not in attendance at that meeting. So I think it'd be more appropriate for Brian to provide an update. I don't see him on the call here today. But one thing I wanted the task force to understand is that the Behavioral Health Committee is pretty active when it comes to a number of different work groups, and including the Division Street property that will eventually become, hopefully, a behavioral health campus. That's number one. Number two is reentry services, including vocational and educational and housing services. There's a separate work group for that. And then, as Dean White indicated, there's a data a group as well that we kind of co-share with the legal and justice folks. So there's plenty of activity happening, and Brian is bringing a lot of energy as the new co-chair to the committee. And I think that he should probably be invited to these meetings so that he can report out as well. So that's what I have.
Oh, absolutely. I guess I'm surprised that he's not invited. And let's make a note of that, Jenna, and make sure that Brian's at the upcoming meetings. Well, thanks for all your work on the Behavioral Health Committee there, Dan and Brian. Important work, and be really interested in getting reports from your work groups and seeing how that model is working for you in the coming months. I will speak to the steering committee report out since Barry is not here. Let's see, we had discussion around the annual report, and we had some discussion around changes to the pretrial process work group. I believe that they may be winding down their work or changing it in some way. We'll hear more about that soon, but I'm looking forward to that. Work group has been around for some time, and I think that the main body, the IPRTF, in these meetings should hear some of their accomplishments, where they are, what still needs to be done, and such. So we'll look forward to that. There was a discussion around the action plan and the planning cycle that is part of the annual report and the action plan. We discussed feedback loops that are necessary in our planning cycle. The county council, city council, and small cities, we want to make sure in any good system, you need to have those feedbacks available so that you're hearing, each part of the system is hearing, has the ability to feedback information into the system so that we can make quick changes and course correct. So we're planning around that. There was some good discussion there. Then shared news on a number of things. Barry met with district court judges and administrators about the subject of the letter that we got from Judge Rands and Judge Anderson. And my meeting with the Whatcom Resource Information Collaborative that Dean White suggested I take on the subject of Project 6. To remind you, Project 6 of the implementation plan is to create a coordinated system of care, and the purpose is to improve communication and collaboration across the behavioral health and criminal justice systems. And so I'm just fascinated with that one, how we move the needle on it, and just looking for ideas. So that was a good meeting. And then Raylene shared some insights from a judicial training she attended covering constitutional and procedural limitations of judges, which really echoed the themes in the letter we received from Judge Rand. And so that was and then of course, we talked about the subject of this meeting that we're having currently. So that's my report. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, Peter, I just wanted to follow up on you'd kind of asked a kind of a tentative question when it comes to reporting out on work groups. And I just want to provide the group here with some data and address a earlier concern that was raised about broken promise to voters, which I would respectfully disagree with. I want to provide just a very brief update on the Division Street property. As we know, the Ann Deacon Center for Hope has been up and running for a few years now. And while there may need to be some improvements to that facility in terms of operationalizing certain aspects of it, it is up and running. Digwalich Mobile Medical Unit has been up and running for a few months now. Their census is right around 50-ish enrolled patients at that facility. We are actively looking for a second location in more of the central Bellingham area, not in the business district, but in the more of the civic area. And in addition to Ann Deacon Center and Digwalich Mobile Medical Unit, the alternate response team is also housed at Division Street. So we're making these improvements and going towards diversion services. And I just want to make it very clear that that work is well underway. And the 23-hour center is it's a multi-faceted, jurisdictional funded facility that's going to take us a little while to get up and running. And I'm very confident in the work that's being done there. So I just want to put that out there that we're progressing. It's taking a little bit of time, but that's how things work. So I just wanted to respond, Peter, to your question, and to Arlene. I think that you had made the comment about that we needed to work harder, and I agree with you.
All right, thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. Bertie, you're up next with Index.
Yeah, so as you heard a bit from Julia, the Index Committee focused our recent meeting in June, meeting with Julia and reviewing largely on the more detailed level of what actual systems exist. We went through the chart and helped inform her and each other about what is possible and what is not possible and where we need to go from there. So it was a good discussion. And so it remains now to all of us engaged with data to see where we go from here.
Fantastic, Bertie. Heather and I had the pleasure of meeting with your work group. I don't know when that was, 2 weeks ago, and that was a good discussion. Is there anything you want to say about your work group?
The most recent meeting was finalizing the charter in order to present it. And we have another meeting scheduled that's a little dicey because of summertime and various people being gone, but there is one on the books. And we plan to review Julia's final report and also look at what data is available for a potential public dashboard. The suggestion has been made that we not wait for perfection and we consider taking available data and putting it out, or it's not up to us, but recommending to the exec that it be put out to the public as at least an initial start. So more
Okay.
to.
Very good. Thank you so much. The next item is the Joint Behavioral Health and Legal Justice, but we are, I believe, pushing that out to the next meeting. So, and then we've already covered the BCC work group adequately, I believe, for this meeting. So on to number 7, which is other business. Please, anyone go ahead with any other business they'd like to bring up related to IPRTF, behavioral health, criminal justice in Whatcom County. All right, then it looks like the next and last item would be public comment. I have one person in the room with me here. Are you interested in making a public comment?
Very short, yes.
Yes, okay. Would you state your name and please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Jan Dietzken. I'm considered a victim because my daughter was in a psychotic episode and she was cutting herself. And I ran in and tried to stop her, and we fought over the knife that she had, and she got the knife away from me and stabbed me twice. Then she ran back into the bathroom to continue to cut herself, and I struggled and ran away. And I went to a neighbor, and then I was all blood, and I said, Carolyn needs help. Carolyn has stabbed me, but she needs help. And when my neighbor called 911, it didn't come out that she was trying to cut herself. The police had not been trained in mental health, and they thought this was a murder. They came very quickly. So now I'm learning a lot about this. In the records, it does not show that my daughter was trying to kill herself and that I was trying to stop her. I thought about the mistakes I've made, which is I should have called 911 earlier. And we had a meeting scheduled with a psychiatrist, and I thought that would be quicker than going to the hospital, even with the DCR. The DCR had 2 other cases at the time. And so I said, well, you go ahead, and then my son is going to get here and we'll go together, taking my daughter to one central. And at that time, the police came with their rifles and they're standing there, and I'm screaming, please go and get my daughter. Finally, they did. And but it was billed as an attempted murder, and it was billed as stabbing as attempted murder. So we have been trying to my son and my daughter-in-law, who is a medical doctor, we've been trying to say, look, this was a psychosis, a heavy psychosis. My daughter was not on the medicine that she needed to be, clozapine, because there is up until January, there's a procedure that the pharmacist could not give clozapine to the provider until there were blood tests. And so this caused quite a bit of problem. Finally, they've gotten rid of that and made it a little easier to get the blood test. So where we are now is my daughter has finally been given clozapine, which in Switzerland, she was in Switzerland for most of the time. They said she's hard to treat, schizophrenic, and she needs clozapine. That seems to be the only thing that works. So now she's on that and has both in Western mental facility and in Eastern mental facility, she's been deemed competent. And so now she's back in jail, and she's back in jail for almost 4 months. And we think enough of this. My daughter-in-law has provided scheduled a wraparound treatment with Lifeways and PACT, and then she could live with me and continue and then go to mental health court. But we're not convincing the prosecutor. I don't know, Mr. Ritchie is still here, but we've met with him, my lawyer and my daughter-in-law and my son have met with Mr. Ritchie. We've met with the other Eric, but we haven't met as a group with Metro Peach, who says this is a domestic violence and she needs to pay. So I'm saying that the police need to be trained in mental health, what that is.
Thank you for your statement.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Do we have anyone else attending who from the public who would like to make a statement? Okay, seeing none, I want to close today's meeting and thank you all for your attendance and your hard work in the community on these very important matters. And I look forward to seeing you at upcoming meetings. So take care.